The Dominion had ruled the stars for 12,000 years. 6 species had joined together long ago to form this great alliance. They had built cities on 1,000 worlds. They had created ships that could cross the galaxy. They had faced enemies that would make lesser beings lose all hope. And they had won every single time. Admiral Hen stood on the bridge of her flagship, the Eternal Vigilance, and watched the stars through the massive viewing window. Her silver skin reflected the distant light of a dying sun. Her 4 eyes, each one a deep purple, scanned the reports floating on holographic screens around her. The war against the Shroud Imperium was finally over. The Shroud had been the worst enemy they had ever faced. They were not a species in the normal sense. They were a sickness, a hunger, a darkness that spread from world to world, consuming all life and adding it to their collective mind. For 300 years, they had eaten their way across the outer territories. Billions had died. But they had not surrendered. They had not run. They had gathered their fleets, united their people, and pushed back against the endless night. Had led the final campaign herself. She had watched good soldiers die. She had made choices that still haunted her dreams. She had ordered attacks that cost thousands of lives to save millions more. In the end, they had driven the Shroud back into the dark spaces between galaxies. The enemy was not destroyed, but they were broken. They would not return for a very long time. "Admiral," said her second-in-command, a tall named. His voice was tired but proud. "The Council has sent their congratulations. They are calling you the savior of the 6 banners." Turned away from the window. "I am no savior. I simply did what needed to be done. The real heroes are the ones who will never come home." Nodded slowly, he understood. They had both lost friends in this war. The victory felt hollow in many ways. "What happens now?" asked. "Now we rebuild," said. "We heal. We remember those we lost and make sure their sacrifice meant something." She walked to her command chair and sat down. The leather was worn from years of use. This chair had been her home for so long. She had made life and death decisions from this very spot. Part of her wondered if she would ever be able to leave it behind. "Set course for she ordered. "It is time to go home." The Eternal Vigilance turned slowly in the void. The great engines hummed to life. Around them, hundreds of other ships did the same. The fleet that had saved civilization was finally going home. But before they could make the jump to faster-than-light speed, something strange happened. A young officer at the sensor station suddenly sat up straight. Her eyes went wide with confusion. "Admiral," she said, her voice uncertain, "I am detecting something unusual." Frowned, define unusual. "There is a region of space approximately 40 light-years from our position. It has always been marked as a restricted zone in our navigation charts. Quarantine Zone 19 Sol. Our records say it has been off-limits for over 8,000 years. Knew about the quarantine zones. There were several scattered across the galaxy. Ancient regions that the founders of the Dominion had declared forbidden. Most contained dead worlds, failed experiments, or dangerous artifacts from species long extinct." "What about it?" asked. The young officer swallowed nervously. "Something is moving inside the zone. Something big. Our long-range sensors are detecting multiple large objects crossing the quarantine boundary." Felt a cold chill run down her spine. In 12,000 years, nothing had ever come out of a quarantine zone. These were places that were sealed for good reason, places that held things too dangerous to approach. "Show me," she commanded. The main viewing screen changed. It showed a map of the local region of space. A large red circle marked the quarantine zone, and there, at the edge of that circle, were dozens of small dots moving outward. "Can you identify them?" asked. "Negative, Admiral. They do not match any known ship designs in our database, but their energy signatures are powerful, very powerful." Stepped closer to the screen. Perhaps it is some kind of natural phenomenon, an asteroid field or debris from an ancient battle. The sensor officer shook her head. No, sir. These objects are moving in formation. They are clearly artificial. They are clearly controlled. Stared at the screen. Her mind raced through possibilities. Could another enemy have been hiding in that zone all this time? Could something have evolved there, growing strong while they fought their wars elsewhere? What do our records say about Zone 19 Sol? She asked. Pulled up the ancient files. His face grew pale as he read them. The records are very old, he said slowly. Most of the data has been lost or corrupted but there are warnings, many warnings. What kind of warnings? Read from the screen. Category 9 Origin, extreme biological hazard. Native species displays unprecedented aggression and adaptability. Do not approach under any circumstances. Do not attempt contact. Do not engage. The bridge fell silent. Everyone knew what it was. They were planets so hostile, so violent, so extreme that life should not be able to exist there. Worlds with crushing gravity and poisonous atmospheres. Worlds where the environment itself tried to kill everything that lived. And somehow, something had evolved on one of those worlds. Something smart enough to build ships. Something that had been waiting in quarantine for 8,000 years. Something that was now coming out. Made her decision quickly. Send a message to the council. Tell them we have a potential new contact emerging from Quarantine Zone 19 Sol. Request immediate guidance. And our fleet? Asked. Looked at the map one more time. The dots continued to move outward. There were more of them now, many more. We hold position, she said. We watch, we wait, and we pray that whatever is coming out of that zone does not have war on its mind. She turned back to the window and looked out at the stars. Just hours ago, she had thought the greatest threat to her people was behind them. She had thought the darkness had finally been pushed back. Now she was not so sure. Something was waking up. Something old. Something that had been deliberately locked away by people who knew things the modern had forgotten. And had the terrible feeling that all her courage, all her skill, all the strength of the 6 banners might not be enough for what was coming. The stars seemed colder now. The darkness between them seemed deeper. And somewhere in that darkness, something was moving toward the light. 3 weeks passed. The objects from the quarantine zone continued to move closer. The council debated endlessly about what to do. Some wanted to attack immediately. Others wanted to flee. Most simply wanted more information. Admiral gave them that information. She sent dozens of reconnaissance drones into the space near the quarantine boundary. Most of them were destroyed within seconds of crossing into that region. Their signals simply vanished, cut off as if they had never existed. But a few drones made it back. They carried data that changed everything they thought they knew about the universe. Stood in the great hall of the Science Ministry, surrounded by the finest minds of the Dominion. On the massive screen before them, images and data from the surviving drones painted a picture of horror. The beings call themselves humans, said Chief Scientist, her voice trembling slightly. They originated from a planet called Earth, in a solar system they call Sol, hence the designation Zone 19 Sol. The screen showed a blue and green world. It looked almost peaceful from space. White clouds swirled across its surface. Oceans sparkled in the light of its sun. It looks beautiful, one of the council members said. It is anything but beautiful, replied. This world is a death trap, a nightmare made real. She changed the display. Numbers and charts appeared, each one more disturbing than the last. Earth has a gravity 1.6 times higher than ours. The atmospheric pressure is crushing by our standards, and the atmosphere itself contains a highly reactive gas called oxygen at extremely dangerous concentrations. For most species in the known galaxy, simply breathing Earth's air would cause rapid cellular damage and death. Murmurs of disbelief spread through the room. The temperature variations are equally extreme, continued. Parts of the planet reach temperatures hot enough to boil water. Other regions are so cold that the seas themselves turn to solid ice. And these humans live in all of these environments. They have adapted to survive everywhere on their world. Stepped forward, tell them about the ecosystem. Nodded grimly. Earth's ecosystem is perhaps the most violent we have ever documented. Nearly every organism on that planet has evolved to kill or be killed. There are predators that hunt using poison, predators that crush their prey with physical strength, predators that hunt in coordinated packs with complex social strategies. She showed images of Earth's creatures, great beasts with massive teeth, serpents that could kill with a single bite, fish that could strip flesh from bone in seconds, insects that spread disease and death wherever they went. And the humans? Asked a council member, his voice barely a whisper. The humans are the most successful predators on this world, said. They rose to dominance not through strength or speed, but through endurance and intelligence. They are persistence predators. She explained the concept. Humans could not run as fast as many of their prey animals. They could not overpower them in direct combat. So instead, they simply followed them for hours, for days, never stopping, never resting, walking and walking and walking until their prey collapsed from exhaustion. They would chase an animal until its heart gave out from stress, said. Then they would eat it. The room fell completely silent. Their bodies are remarkably resilient, continued. They can survive injuries that would kill any instantly. Broken bones heal within weeks. Lost blood is replaced naturally. They can continue fighting even with wounds that should make movement impossible. She showed medical data that made several scientists look away in disgust. They also possess an unusual relationship with pain. Their bodies produce natural chemicals that allow them to ignore damage during stressful situations. A human in danger can essentially turn off their pain response and continue functioning through injuries that would incapacitate any rational being. One of the military advisors raised his hand. What about their technology, their ships? Changed the display again. Now it showed the vessels that had emerged from the quarantine zone. They were massive. Each ship was several kilometers long, bristling with weapons and armor. Their technology is different from ours, but roughly equivalent in capability, said. However, their approach to warfare is not equivalent at all. Our drones captured fragments of their military communications. They have been watching us for a very long time. Watching us? Asked, surprised. For at least 200 years, perhaps longer, they observed our wars. They studied our tactics. They learned everything about us while we knew nothing about them. Admiral felt a cold weight settle in her stomach. She had thought the Shroud Imperium was the greatest threat her people would ever face. The Shroud had been mindless hunger, endless and terrible but ultimately predictable. These humans were something else entirely. They were intelligent. They were patient. They had spent centuries studying the like-prey animals, learning their weaknesses, preparing for the moment when they would finally emerge. There is one more thing, said quietly, perhaps the most disturbing detail of all. She showed images of humans interacting with other Earth creatures, not hunting them, not killing them, living with them. Humans form emotional bonds with predators. They keep dangerous animals in their homes as companions. They call them pets. They love them. The screen showed a human child sleeping next to a large predator with sharp teeth and claws. Both seemed completely peaceful. They do this for comfort, explained. They enjoy the presence of creatures that could kill them easily. It brings them happiness. No one spoke for a long moment. Finally, Admiral turned to face the council. 300 of their ships have now crossed into our space. They have not attacked anyone. They have not made demands, but they have sent a message. She played the recording. A human face appeared on the screen. It was Admiral of the Terran Accord. He had small eyes and smooth skin. He looked almost gentle, almost harmless. But had read the reports. She knew what that gentle face hid. "People of the Dominion," said calmly, "we come in peace, but we are prepared for war. We request a meeting to discuss mutual relations between our peoples. We mean you no harm, but we will defend ourselves if necessary. The quarantine is over. Humanity is ready to take its place among the stars." The message ended. The council members looked at each other with fear in their eyes. These were beings who had faced the shroud without flinching. They had watched billions die and kept fighting. They were the bravest souls in the known galaxy. And now, for the first time in 12,000 years, they were truly afraid. Understood their fear. She felt it too. But she also knew that fear would not save them. Only knowledge could do that. "I will meet with them," she announced. "I will go to their admiral and look into his eyes. I will learn what kind of creatures we are truly dealing with." It was the only choice, and prayed it would not be her last. The meeting was set for Anchorage, a neutral space station at the edge of territory. It was an old place, built thousands of years ago for trade and diplomacy. Many historic agreements had been signed within its walls. Admiral arrived with a small escort of 50 soldiers. She had wanted to bring more, but the humans had requested minimal military presence from both sides. A show of good faith, they called it. The human delegation arrived exactly on time. Admiral walked at the front, flanked by 6 officers in crisp gray uniforms. They moved with casual confidence, their eyes constantly scanning their surroundings. Not with fear noticed, with assessment, with calculation. Was shorter than she had expected. Humans were smaller than on average. But there was something about the way he carried himself that made him seem larger. He walked like someone who had never doubted himself for a single moment in his life. "Admiral Hen," said, extending his hand, "thank you for agreeing to meet with us." Had studied human customs. She knew the hand gesture was a greeting. She reached out and took his hand carefully. The grip was firm, stronger than she had anticipated. The skin was warm, almost hot compared to her own body temperature. Humans ran hot, she remembered. Their bodies burned energy at rates that seemed wasteful and impossible. "Admiral," she replied, "your message said you come in peace. I hope that is true." "It is," said simply. "We have no desire for conflict with the Dominion. We have spent centuries watching your civilization. We admire your unity, your courage, your dedication to protecting life. We believe our peoples could be great allies." They walked together into the station's diplomatic hall. A large table had been prepared with chairs suited for both species. Refreshments were available, though notice the human drinks were kept separate. Their food was toxic to most. As they sat down, studied the human officers. They seemed relaxed. One of them was actually smiling and whispering something to a colleague. Soft laughter followed. They were laughing at a diplomatic meeting that could determine the fate of billions. Found it deeply unsettling. "You seem very calm," she observed. Nodded. "Should we not be? This is a happy occasion. 2 great peoples meeting for the first time. The beginning of what we hope will be a long friendship. Your ships carry enough weapons to destroy entire worlds. Your soldiers are trained for war, and you laugh as if this were a celebration." Smile faded slightly, not in anger but in understanding. "Admiral Hen, let me explain something about humanity. We have learned through thousands of years of difficult history that fear and joy can exist together. That laughter in dark times is not weakness. It is survival." He leaned forward slightly. "We know what we are. We know what we are capable of, but we choose not to let that knowledge crush us. We choose to find moments of happiness wherever we can, because if we did not, the weight of our own potential for destruction would drive us mad." Considered his words. "Your species has a violent history." "Extremely violent," agreed without hesitation. "We have fought countless wars among ourselves. We have developed weapons capable of ending all life on our. We came very close to destroying ourselves several times. And yet you survived. We always survive. His voice was quiet but firm. That is what we do. We break, we bleed, we suffer, and then we get back up and keep going. It is the one thing we are better at than any other species we have ever encountered. We simply refuse to stop. One of the human officers chose that moment to reach for a drink. The container slipped from his hand. Without thinking, he caught it before it hit the table, but in doing so, his hand closed around the sharp edge of the lid. Blood dripped from a cut on his palm, red human blood, bright and startling. Expected the man to cry out, to call for medical attention, to at least show some sign of distress. Instead, the officer simply wrapped a cloth around his hand and continued listening to the conversation. His expression never changed. He did not even seem to notice the injury. "Does that not hurt?" asked, unable to hide her surprise. The officer glanced at his hand as if seeing it for the first time. "Oh, it's nothing, just a scratch." "You are bleeding." "I've had worse," the officer shrugged. "Broke my leg last year during training, finished the exercise anyway. Pain is just information. You can choose what to do with it." Felt something shift inside her. She had led armies. She had faced the shroud. She had thought she understood courage and endurance and strength. But these humans operated on a completely different level. They treated damage to their own bodies as minor inconveniences. They laughed in the face of tension. They had nearly destroyed themselves with their own weapons and simply shrugged it off as a learning experience. "Show me your history," she said suddenly. "Show me what made you this way." Studied her for a moment. Then he nodded to one of his officers, who activated a portable display. Images began to flow. Earth's history, compressed into a series of terrible and beautiful moments. Wars that killed millions, plagues that wiped out entire populations, famines that starved nations, natural disasters that leveled cities, and through it all humans kept going. They rebuilt, they adapted, they survived. Saw humans walking through burning ruins to rescue strangers. She saw them diving into freezing water to save drowning children. She saw them standing against impossible odds with nothing but determination in their eyes. She also saw their capacity for cruelty, the weapons they built, the suffering they caused each other, the darkness that lurked in their hearts alongside the light. "We are not perfect," said quietly as the images faded. "We have done terrible things, things that shame us, but we have also done magnificent things. We have reached beyond our limitations again and again. We have refused to accept that anything is impossible." Sat in silence for a long moment. "I came here to assess whether you were a threat," she finally said. "And what have you concluded?" Met his eyes directly. "You are the greatest threat my people have ever faced, not because you want to destroy us, but because we could never stop you if you tried." Did not argue, he simply nodded. "That is why we want peace," he said, "because we know what we could do, and we have decided that we do not want to do it. We want to build, not destroy. We want to protect, not conquer. Give us a chance to prove that." Wished she could believe him. She wished she could trust those calm eyes and gentle words. But she had seen the blood on that officer's hand. She had seen the way he ignored it, as if pain were simply a suggestion that he chose to decline. And she knew, with terrible certainty, that if the humans ever changed their minds about peace, nothing in the galaxy would be able to stop them. She returned to her fleet that night and wrote her report. Her recommendation was clear: avoid conflict with humanity at all costs. The Council received her report. They read it carefully. And then they ignored it completely. The attack came 3 weeks after his meeting with Admiral. She was not told about it until it was already happening. The Council had moved in secret, convinced that a quick strike would scatter the human fleet before they could establish themselves in space. 340 warships jumped into the region where the human fleet was stationed. Their orders were simple: destroy the flagship Indomitable Spirit and kill Admiral. Without their leader, the humans would fall into chaos. Without their largest ship, they would lose their military advantage. It was a reasonable plan. It had worked against other enemies before. It failed completely against the humans. Admiral watched the battle unfold from a communication station far from the fighting. Live feeds showed her everything: every ship, every weapon, every death. The fleet emerged from their jump with weapons already firing. Hundreds of missiles and energy beams lanced toward the Indomitable Spirit. It was a perfect ambush. The humans should not have had time to react. But they did react. Somehow, impossibly, they were ready. Point defense systems on the human ships activated instantly. Weapons that could track and destroy incoming projectiles faster than computers could process. Missiles vanished in clouds of fire before they could reach their targets. Energy beams were absorbed by shields that glowed bright blue under the assault. And then the humans fired back. Their weapons were different from technology: heavier, more brutal, less elegant but far more effective. Great cannons that hurled massive projectiles at incredible speeds, energy weapons that cut through armor like it was made of paper. The first ship exploded within 30 seconds of the battle beginning, then another, then another. "They were waiting for us," whispered one of the officers watching beside. "They knew we were coming." Of course they knew, thought bitterly. They had been watching for centuries. They probably knew about the attack before the Council had even approved it. But it was not just the human weapons that made the difference. It was how they fought. Warfare was based on order and precision. Ships moved in coordinated patterns. Attacks were planned carefully and executed exactly. It was beautiful in its way. A dance of destruction with clear rules and predictable movements. The humans did not dance, they brawled. Their ships moved in ways that made no tactical sense. They broke formation constantly. They took risks that should have gotten them killed. They seemed to communicate without any signals that equipment could detect, anticipating each other's movements through some invisible understanding. And they fought dirty. Electronic warfare programs flooded communication channels with noise and false signals. Commanders lost contact with their ships. Squadrons attacked allies by mistake, unable to tell friend from enemy. The careful order of the fleet dissolved into chaos within minutes. Then the boarding parties arrived. Small human vessels, fast and heavily armored, crashed directly into warships. They did not dock gently. They punched through the outer hull and released soldiers directly into the corridors inside. Human Marines in powered armor. Had read reports about human physical capabilities. She had thought she understood what that meant. Watching the Marines in action showed her how wrong she had been. They moved through the ships like predators through a flock of prey. Their armor made them stronger and faster than any organic being should be. Their weapons tore through barriers and bodies with equal ease. They did not hesitate. They did not slow down. They simply advanced, room by room, deck by deck. Soldiers fought back. They were brave. They were trained. They gave everything they had. It was not enough. One recording showed a human Marine taking a direct hit from an energy weapon. The blast knocked him backward and burned through part of his armor. Any soldier would have died instantly. The human got back up. His arm was badly burned. Blood was visible through the damaged armor. He ignored both problems and kept fighting. Another recording showed a group of Marines surrounded by defenders. They were outnumbered 5-1. Any sensible soldier would have retreated or surrendered. The humans charged directly into the formation. They fought with weapons, with fists, with anything they could find. When one Marine ran out of ammunition, he simply grabbed the nearest soldier and used him as a shield while advancing on the others. The surrounded Marines killed everyone in that corridor. Then they continued their mission. The worst moment came near the end of the battle. A badly wounded Marine found himself trapped in an engine room, surrounded by soldiers. He could not escape. He could not win. So he pulled out a grenade, smiled at the soldiers pointing weapons at him, and said something that the translation systems rendered as, "See you in hell." He detonated the explosive. The engine room was destroyed. The ship lost power and began to drift. The Marine had chosen death rather than capture, and he had laughed while doing it. The battle lasted 6 hours. When it ended, 340 ships had been reduced to burning wreckage. 11 human ships had been destroyed. The exchange rate was 30-1. Admiral broadcast a message to the surviving vessels. "That was your one free mistake," he said. His voice was calm, almost sad. "The next will cost you everything. Choose peace." He did not pursue the retreating ships. He did not demand revenge for his fallen soldiers. He simply let them go. Watched the survivors limp back to space. These were veteran warriors who had faced the shroud without flinching. Now they looked broken, hollow. They had seen something they could not understand, and it had shattered their confidence completely. One captain sent her a private message before he died from his wounds. "They are not like us," he said, his voice weak. "They do not fight to win. They fight because fighting is what they are. It is built into them. It is part of their souls. We cannot beat them, Admiral. We can only hope they truly want peace." The council met in emergency session the next day. The who had ordered the attack were removed from power. New leaders, more cautious leaders, took their place. Was summoned to give her assessment. "We cannot win a war against humanity," she told them bluntly. "Their technology is similar to ours. Their numbers are smaller, but their soldiers are not soldiers in any sense we understand. They are weapons in human form. They feel pain and ignore it. They face death and laugh at it. They will not stop until they have won or until every single one of them is dead." She paused, letting her words sink in. "And if we somehow manage to kill every human soldier, there would be more to take their place. Because every human is a potential warrior. Every single one of them carries that same fire inside." The council listened. This time they believed her. They sent a message to Admiral, requesting peace talks. Accepted immediately. He had never wanted war in the first place, but knew the truth that would haunt her for the rest of her life. The humans had not won that battle because they were stronger or smarter or better equipped. They had won because they simply refused to lose. And against that kind of enemy, courage meant nothing, strength meant nothing, numbers meant nothing. There was only survival or extinction, and they had been very, very lucky that the humans had chosen to let them survive. Peace came slowly. Trust does not grow quickly between peoples who have seen each other's capacity for violence, but the humans were patient, and they had learned to listen. Admiral was appointed as the first ambassador to the Terran Accord. It was a strange position for a military commander, but the council believed she understood the humans better than anyone else. She had looked into their eyes and seen what lurked beneath their gentle words. She moved to a space station at the border between human and territory. Human diplomats and scientists joined her there. For months, they talked. They shared information. They slowly began to understand each other. Learned many things about humanity during those months. She learned that humans had imposed the quarantine on themselves. 8,000 years ago, when they first developed space travel, their leaders had looked out at the younger species of the galaxy and made a difficult choice. Humans were too dangerous, too aggressive, too unpredictable. If they spread among the stars too quickly, they might accidentally destroy everything they touched. So they had sealed themselves away. They had watched and waited and worked to control their more destructive impulses. They had built a civilization that channeled their aggression into construction rather than destruction. "We spent asking ourselves one question," Admiral told her during one of their many conversations. "Can we be trusted with the power we have? Can we become something more than killers?" "And what answer did you find?" asked. Smiled sadly. "We found that the question never goes away. We will always be capable of terrible things. The darkness is part of us, but we can choose what we do with it. We can choose to protect instead of destroy. We can choose to build instead of break." Began to see humans differently after that. Yes, they were dangerous. Yes, they carried violence in their blood, but they also carried something else, something that might have been even more powerful. They carried hope. Humans hoped constantly. They hoped even when hope made no sense. They faced impossible situations and believed, truly believed, that they could find a way through. That stubborn hope had carried them through ice ages and plagues and wars and disasters. It was the fire that burned at the center of their souls. And they wanted to share that fire with others. 3 years passed. The alliance between the Terran Accord and the Dominion grew stronger. Trade routes opened. Scientists worked together. Soldiers trained side by side. Found herself spending more and more time among humans. She learned their jokes. She tried their food, at least the parts that would not poison her. She even adopted one of their customs, drinking a hot brown liquid called coffee each morning, though it made her heart's race uncomfortably. She was on a human ship, the Dawn's Light, when the news arrived. The Shroud Imperium had returned. They came from the void between galaxies, just as they had before. But this time, there were more of them, many more. The darkness that they had pushed back 3 years ago had been regathering its strength, growing and spreading in the empty spaces where no one could see. Now it was hungry again, and it was coming for everything. Watched the sensor data with growing horror. The Shroud fleet was 10 times larger than the force she had defeated before. It would overwhelm the defenses in weeks. It would consume world after world until nothing remained. "We cannot stop them," she whispered, "not alone." Admiral stood beside her. He had been visiting the Dawn's Light when the alert came. Now he studied the same data with calm, calculating eyes. "Then it is a good thing you are not alone," he said. He opened a communication channel to the Terran fleet. "All ships, this is Admiral. The Shroud Imperium has returned. Our allies are in danger. All vessels are to proceed to space immediately. Full military deployment." He closed the channel and turned to. "We made a promise when we signed the Alliance Treaty. An attack on thee is an attack on humanity. We do not break our promises." Within hours, human ships began arriving. Not dozens, not hundreds, thousands. The entire Terran military had mobilized. Every ship they had, every soldier they could spare, was coming to defend a species they had known for only 3 years. Felt tears forming in her eyes, did not cry easily, but this moment was too big for her to contain. "Why?" she asked. "Why would you risk so much for us?" Put a hand on her shoulder. It was a human gesture of comfort. Once, it would have frightened her. Now it felt like the most natural thing in the world. "Because that is what we do," he said simply. "We protect those who cannot protect themselves. We stand against the darkness. We have been waiting 8,000 years to prove that we could be more than monsters. This is our chance." The combined fleet gathered at the edge of space. Human dreadnoughts flew alongside cruisers. Soldiers of both species prepared for battle together. Admiral took command of the Allied forces. He stood on the bridge of the indomitable Spirit, surrounded by human and officers working side by side. The Shroud approached like a wave of darkness. Millions of bioships, each one filled with hungry malice. They had consumed countless worlds. They had never been stopped. They had never faced humanity. Opened a channel to all Allied ships. His voice was calm, steady, certain. "This is Fleet Admiral to all vessels. The darkness is here. It thinks it is unstoppable. It thinks it will swallow everything in its path." He smiled. It was not a gentle smile. It was the smile of a predator who had finally found worthy prey. Let us remind it why it should be afraid of us. The battle that followed was unlike anything the galaxy had ever seen. Human ships charged directly into the Shroud formation, weapons blazing. They fought with the same brutal efficiency they had shown against but now that violence was directed at an enemy that deserved it. Vessels provided support, their precise tactics complementing the chaotic human assault. Together, they were stronger than either could have been alone. The Shroud fought back with all its terrible power. Ships were destroyed, soldiers died, the darkness pressed closer and closer. But the humans would not stop. They kept fighting, they kept advancing, they refused to accept defeat. And slowly, impossibly, the darkness began to retreat. The battle lasted 3 days. When it ended, the Shroud Imperium had been broken, not just pushed back but shattered. The survivors fled into the void, too damaged to ever return. Stood on the bridge of the Indomitable Spirit as the last enemy ship disappeared from sensors. Around her, human and officers embraced each other. They laughed, they cried, they celebrated together. Admiral stood beside her, looking out at the stars. "Your people were brave," told him. "Many died to protect us." "They knew the risks," replied. "They chose to come anyway, because they believed it was right, because they wanted to prove that humanity could be more than its worst impulses." Nodded slowly. She understood now. She finally understood what made humans so different from every other species in the galaxy. They were not just survivors. They were not just warriors. They were believers. They believed in hope and courage and sacrifice. They believed that the future could be better than the past. They believed that even the darkest night would eventually give way to dawn. And they were willing to die for those beliefs. They had shined through darkness for 12,000 years. They had been brave and strong and noble. But when they met the Armada, they learned what courage truly meant. And they were grateful forever after that humanity had chosen to shine beside them rather than against them. The dawn was coming, and for the first time in a very long time, the galaxy faced it together.